Like moths to a flame, you've thrown caution to the wind for a glimpse into our world. Well, now you're in it.
Welcome to Effed Up Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we will be doing a new podcast. It's a submitted story by Hunter Forrest. If you want to read the original on this site, it's called Abbott Mansion. Very strange story, and it stuck with me. I got this some time ago. Actually, it was in August of 2015, and I can't believe we're only just now getting around to it. So it's quite a tale, and I hope you enjoy it. Before we jump into that, though, if you have an effed up story of your own on the paranormal, UFOs, or what have you, please send that to us at the official site, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com, and I will get it on the website, and we will get it into a podcast. And with that said, into the story, Abbott Mansion, sent in by Hunter Forrest. So this story is essentially a bunch of really weird random events that took place around 9 to 10 years ago from when he sent this in. And he said it all started when his friend John and himself started getting very invested into the paranormal nature of things, hauntings, urban legends, and etc. And they were mostly in it for the entertainment aspects and never really got into the, as he put it, quoted, culty aspects of it that goes hand in hand with those things. And he said they started venturing out into different locations around the state, which is the state of Oklahoma, and the borders of the surrounding states, which is Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas. And if you ever... Arkansas. Well, butchering words is kind of my staple at this point. So, anyway, Arkansas. And he said, if you ever watch the show Supernatural, then you know what it's like in those areas. He said it's some city, but also a lot of country and hidden things that people don't generally know about. And he said after a few months or so of searching, for spook lights, crybaby bridges, and haunted graveyards, they decided to get into some darker stuff and wanted to visit the location of serial killer hotspots or where murders had actually taken place. And while searching the internet, they had come across a place right there in their own city. And it was a legend about a rich oil tycoon named Mr. Abbott. And this was from the early 30s or 40s. And apparently he had built a huge mansion atop the highest hill overlooking their downtown area. And the home was, of course, called Abbott Mansion, but soon became the Crowley House. And I'm sure some of you have heard of that, but it's become known as the Crowley House due to its, history with the occult. And in this home, Mr. Abbott had supposedly hosted an array of very high-class occult parties and ceremonies within the home. There are some gray areas, but as the story goes, one day he snaps, and he slaughtered his pregnant wife, their 5 children, all of which were very young, and he kept them on a mattress in the living room where he lived with them for weeks and weeks. Nobody knew. And he would go to their schools to say that the children were sick, and shopping for the family of 8 at the grocery store. He would just continue this on. None of the locals were suspicious, and after some time, he then burned the bodies in the living room. And a few days after that took place, he ran from one end of the home's upstairs hallway to the other, where he dove from a side window onto the concrete below, killing himself, committing suicide, and taking any tales of truth about what really took place with him. So fast forward to when Hunter and John were checking out the place, and he said they had to park in a city park behind the home, which was blocked by a massive line of trees and bushes that separated these 2 massive fields. And he said it seemed very creepy and weird. It literally overlooked the entire city. It was an amazing view. But there was something weird about the house. It gave off this strange, cold, ancient feeling, if that makes any sense. He said it was a very hollow and desolate feeling. And they were too scared to go inside, and everything was boarded up anyways. It would have been, breaking and entering. So they visited this several times, and on the 3rd time, he said they were walking up to the home when this car pulled up. And they thought at the time that it might have been the cops, so they ran and dove into this tree line. But somehow his friend John managed to land on the concrete slab, which Hunter found hilarious, and I would too. But anyway, they soon realized that the car was full of 4 younger people. It was 2 girls and 2 guys. And then they figured that they were here for the same reason that they were, so they approached and introduced themselves. And they, however, were here for a different reason. They were very heavy into the occult and came to do a ceremony. So, just to put the contrast of groups here, you got John and Hunter, and they're not into the occult aspects. They're interested in haunting and stuff like that. They're afraid to go into the place. They kind of just go and hope that they're going to see stuff around. Then you got this other group of people who are in way deeper than they are with this stuff, into the occult. These are the people they run into, and all 2 groups are at the place at this time. And he said that this group of 4 had 15 iron bars that they made into a star. And they poured salt into a circle around it. And they then placed a candle in each inner corner of the star and had one large candle in the center. He said they stood around while one girl read from some book, and she had that she had with her, and the others would repeat what she said. So I guess it was kind of like church, and also with you, right? No offense to anybody. Anyway, don't rip me up in the comments for that. I can already see it. So that's what they're doing. And then they sat around in silence for a moment and told, John and Hunter to come and feel the ground where they were. And Hunter said, this is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. The ground was hot, not burning, but very warm, like a cup of hot coffee. And he said it wasn't from the candle flames either. This was on the ground, and it wasn't warm anywhere else. It was only inside that salt circle. And it was extremely bizarre. And then this group had pulled out a Ouija board, and they started doing something else. So Hunter and John walked around the house, or no, at least Hunter did. He walked around the house, and he was looking through the cracked windows. And while on the backside of the house exploring, him and John, they heard the sound of what sounded like heavy hammering or stomping coming from inside the house. and it went from one side to the other and just stopped. Very strange. Really creeped them out. Mainly because of the legend of Mr. Abbott running and jumping out of the window. I guess that's what it sounded like, was Mr. Abbott running across the hallway as he jumped through the window. And he said when they came back around to the rest of the group, and he asked them if they had heard it, and sure enough, they did. And one girl proclaimed that it was their doing, which of course they found creepy. And he said as, him and John were leaving, and John had gotten one of the girls' phone numbers in case that, they decided to come back or go somewhere else. And they, then they get on the road, they go home, they really freaked out, they're very entertained, but then, like all of our great stories, things get really weird. So, this girl that John exchanged numbers with, she gives him a call 2 weeks later, and she invites him over to her apartment with the same group to conduct another ceremony. And John invited Hunter, but he declined due to the fact that, he likes to know about those things, but he doesn't like to make himself vulnerable, opening himself up to them any further than just that. And I respect that I'm a little bit cautious like that myself, even though I have gotten in deeper than I'd care to. But so just John goes, and John goes over to the girl's house, and they're hanging out for an hour or so. They're watching TV and just chilling out. And then the girl, the one that had the book when they were at the mansion, apparently she decides that it's time for all these guys to do this ritual. And they gathered into a circle and repeated whatever this girl read from her book. And John described it to Hunter as it sounded like some kind of weird Latin, like a prayer or some guides on whatever to focus on or what they were supposed to feel. And then he said, all of a sudden, he was asleep. Or it was something like being asleep. And he could see himself standing with these people from a distance. And he said, when he looked at himself, he knew it wasn't really him anymore. Like it was just a hollow shell. And then he said he got the feeling like he was scared to death by someone jumping out from behind the corner. Like he was expecting something really bad to happen. And with a heavy dose of adrenaline and a very panicked mind, far different from how things started. I mean, it sounds to me like he's almost getting something intuitive here. And anyway, so then he said he started to focus on this closet door, and he had this very ominous feeling, and all of a sudden, he knew that something evil that they had summoned was behind this door. Whatever they did, they pulled something and it was behind this door. And he also knew that whatever this thing was had him in its sight, because he was weak and he was not ready for any of this. And he said then in his mind, it almost flashed into this evil entity's mind that he could feel its hate, he could feel its evil. He made a connection with it. And all of a sudden, he felt this thing rush up and go through his body. And he claimed he had woken up fully at that point, but he could not talk, make any sounds, or even move, paralyzed. He said he felt like stone and just locked into place. Then he said he got some weird moment of clarity, and he managed to break out of this trance. He is not able to explain how or why, but he did, and he said he just felt natural to be away from it. So that's where he went. However, he did not know what means of travel he used. He doesn't know how he got home. He said when he broke out of this trance and into a cold sweat, he basically told everyone there, fuck you, and he left immediately. He called Hunter with a lot of, I guess, confused, like, what the hell happened to me, kind of questioning. And neither Hunter or John really knows what happened to him. It's almost blanked out for John. But Hunter thinks that, if for anybody who's done any studying on astral or demonic nature. I guess astral projection or whatever. You probably have an idea of what may have taken place that day. So to sum up everything, Hunter said he believes that Mr. Abbott was possessed by something he and his wealthy group of occultists had conjured up in that home, which led him to massacre his family and ultimately lead to insanity and suicide. And he also believes that whatever those people, the group of people that they met there, whatever they were doing had something to do with that entity or demon or evil spirit or whatever you want to call it, that showed up, and that group had befriended it and knew it wanted John for some reason, and Hunter believes that's why they invited him over. Almost, I don't know if I'd use the word sacrifice, but that's kind of what it sounds like. They knew he was vulnerable, that he would be a good target, invited him over. I don't know what
at the very least, bait.
At the very least, bait. And lastly, as a side note, Hunter said the owner of the property has claimed that the property to be evil and haunted. So this is the owner, the guy or girl who owns it, claims the property to be evil and haunted. But after ghost hunters started trespassing and breaking into the home, he quickly changed his story and said that it was silly talk. So it seems a bit strange to do a 180 on that. And also the public records have been, what Hunter said, is obviously manipulated over the past 20 to 30 years. And he assumes that is to cover up the murders that were probably done there for occult reasons. So I guess, that's Hunter's summary. And that's what it sounds like to me, too. Just to summarize the whole thing, you got Hunter and John, they're friends. They're kind of new to the paranormal. They're poking and prodding, trying to find some place to go. They find this mansion. It's boarded up. Not really supposed to be there. They don't want to go in anyway. Just want to go. They hear the stories. It's interesting. They randomly bump into this group who are very serious into this stuff. They're into the occult. They start doing some strange stuff there, and when they do, Hunter and John actually witness some of it coming to be, like the footsteps, what sounds like Mr. Abbott running through the hallway, the ground getting hot in the star that the group had made when they were doing their rituals. And then they seemingly summoned something. They made some kind of connection. John had exchanged numbers with one of the girls in the group. They must have talked it over, thought that he would be a good target for whatever it is that they were doing, and they called him out. Because remember now, they originally phoned John, and John was going to invite Hunter, but they didn't invite Hunter. They invited John. I think that's the way they wanted it to be anyway. And then they start doing this own ritual, making John believe he's part of the group, when all the while he was a target for whatever they were doing. And one thing that I will say for rituals, as far as I know, as far as I've been involved and as far as I've read, is that most of the time there has to be something given to gain. Like, you have to lose something to gain something. Something always has to be sacrificed, which is why that's so prominent and why it's frowned upon by a lot of people. And the bigger the sacrifice, I guess, is needed for the bigger reward. So that's what it sounds.
Hunter's claim in this instance is that if we were to go today and look up the Abbott Mansion or the Crowley House under whatever name we could find information under, you wouldn't find anything about Mr. Abbott.
No, I don't think. I think you would, because
he was saying, he said near the end of the story that, the history of the house has been altered since.
That could be. Now, I don't know to what extent that he's referring to it. I'm assuming that the story with Mr. Abbott, you could probably still find it. I think what he's talking about, and he'll probably chime in the comments, is that there's obvious signs of records being manipulated, but mostly, I think, to cover up the fact that there were so many murders there, and that has to do, I guess, with the history. But I mean, as far as well as I do, that a lot of times the stories that you find on a place are, if there's any truth to them and they're somehow damaging to somebody and somebody doesn't want you to know, they'll do what they can to eradicate it so anyone, nobody can find it. But there's always traces of that stick around, either on the internet or probably an old news article or whatever.
So, with this tale, of course, there's a couple of things. On the face of it, we have this house that in the past has played witness to this countless occult rituals, and who knows what went on in these instances. But aside from that, we have a man who, quote unquote, goes crazy, snaps, loses his mind, kills his family, piles their bodies up in the middle of the living room on a mattress, and just goes about his daily routine for a couple of weeks before burning the bodies and killing himself. I mean, that's that's a lot of darkness, all in one spot, all at one time. There could very well be, whenever you're playing around with black magic, whether you consider yourself a professional or just a dabbler, it's not uncommon to draw the attention of things, whether on purpose or otherwise. Really, I think that the scary truth with a lot of this stuff is that it's actually probably quite easy to draw the attention of things that you probably shouldn't be drawing the attention of. If all the lore is to be believed, and I mean, there's so much of it from so many different, cultural backgrounds and societies throughout history. Generally speaking, spirit beings are somewhat jealous of those of us here in the material world, in the solid 3D world, and because of that, it seems that they're always watching. So when you got a group of bored rich people performing rituals night after night or week after week or whatever the frequency is not it is not too much of a stretch for me personally to think, in that kind of a circumstance, it probably wouldn't take too much to draw the attention of some dark entity. Of course, I think, again, like I've mentioned in the past, I think it's too black and white to say angels and demons. I think there's a whole gradient of entities that are kicking around out there in the spirit world, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Excuse me. Regardless, though, given the event, given the kind of darkness involved with this kind of a thing, killing your pregnant wife and your children, that's a special kind of sick, right? That goes beyond, violent murderers may kill, if they feel that you've insulted them, or to kill you to steal your shit or whatever. But the idea of killing your family, that's a special kind of darkness, and I think it's not too much of a stretch to think in this instance that Abbott may indeed have been, touched by something from beyond, something that made him do horrible things. And then maybe it left. And he, once realizing what he had done, killed himself, or it forced him to kill himself. I think it'd be even more evil of this entity to just, all right, I made you do something horrible to your family, and now I'm going to leave and let you deal with that psychologically. And I think in that instance, most of us probably would run and jump out the window. Because how in the hell?
I'll tell you what I find interesting, and bear in mind that this is completely just off. I'm just speculating.
Just some conjecture.
Yeah, this may not be true. It may not. It's just something to think about. It's just a line of thought. And so when you think of somebody like Mr. Abbott, he's a highly successful, rich oil tycoon. So when you think of somebody who climbs the ladder in society in that way, to be that successful, you usually think and you associate those people with being very grounded, very down to earth and realistic. These are people that are usually very good with their money. They're very logical,
practical, pragmatic people. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't generally, these are usually the first types of people you expect to scoff at the paranormal, the occult, demons, and this sort of thing. And so I find it interesting that we have so many stories like, so we have Mr. Abbott. Obviously, in his case, he's into occult stuff, right? But, I mean, that's not new. I mean, what about the stories of, like, Bohemian Grove? The stories of all kinds of celebrities in the music and movie industry that are into the occult. And again, like these people I'm referring to are especially successful. I mean, when you look at the amount of people in the world, the billions of people, and like now we're talking about the 1% and 2% that are so much more successful, so much more wealthy, so much more privileged, and known and successful than the other 98% in the world. And we know that so many of these guys are that they do deal with the occult, that they do deal with these very dark and shady things. And you have to wonder if there is some real truth into doing these rituals, doing this occult. Like perhaps that's where their success comes from to begin with. They do say that the world is Satan's, the world of earthly possessions, things, the world, those kinds of things belong to the devil. And so by doing these things, he'll reward you here, but at what cost, right? Seemingly a temporary, fleeting thing. Yeah, you'll get it here, but how long are we alive here? I mean, supposedly we live hundreds of thousands of lives, which, if any of that's true, then we're getting the very raw end of the deal there. But I mean, what do you make of that? Like, what's your thoughts on that, Ryan?
Well, it's a great point, and like you kind of alluded to, it's not just the celebrities of this world that that's the celebrities. That's a relatively modern phenomenon. What you see a lot of the times as well is, like you mentioned, the Bohemian Grove, and I mean, let's face it, we've never been able to get any conclusive, information about exactly what they're doing, or all the events that take place there. We just have a few reports from a few people that have snuck in, but almost definitely they've only seen a small part of it. But, I think it draws on or points to a bigger issue, is that it's not just the celebrities. Like I said, that's a recent thing. It's, the rich and the powerful have been accused of meddling with the occult and diabolical forces, going way back, that's and that's something that we don't hear of or talk about so much. Is the idea of the elite and their connection. In past times, it was a pretty common thing for the chief to get supernatural aid from the shaman. Hitler was said to have been tangled up into different rituals and occult teachings and activities. And, all the way back through history, there's all kinds of rulers and leaders that have, done and very strange things, ritualistic behavior, bathing in blood and skewering people on stakes.
Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad Dracul. There's many stories involving the elite of this world going back. Of course, those kind of, since the Second World War, we don't hear of it so much. But I think it's fair to say that there probably is a connection between, because, let's face it, in just the regular everyday waking world, the people who get ahead, especially in business, are the psychopaths. People are willing to destroy other people's lives, their reputations, destroy their companies, do anything for the bottom dollar. I mean, those are the guys who get the promotions and get ahead. So I don't think it's too much of a leap in logic to say that, if the paranormal is real, and, I have every reason to believe that it is, black magic, as it were, might not necessarily have as much to do with, magical spells and Eye of Newts and Toe of Frog, and more to do with individuals' ability to, focus their will and perhaps the will of others onto a single task, and perhaps in treating with entities that are, non-physical, non-human, and in a lot of cases definitely not moral either. And like you said, it's not always a sacrifice. In some of these entities that you deal with, you need to produce certain kinds of scents, like incense, certain smells, certain objects and symbols and colors that they identify with, and it's kind of a sign of respect and a laying out kind of a welcome mat for them. And they're not not everything's bad, of course. Like everything, the whole world is just a series of lighter and darker gray spots. There's no black and white. It's just this gradient. And but if we're going to look at the corporate world and the way it's structured and the way that it benefits those who are without morals, without ethics, i.e. the sociopath or the psychopath. These people are a perfect fit for the corporate world. And if in the course of their lifetime's journey, these, usually brilliant and individuals who at this point now have money and power, if they begin to discover that there's a deeper part to the world, now you got the time and the money and the resources to really go after that. If you discover that, there's a real benefit, a real personal benefit to being able to, use your lawyers and your corporate contracts just as good as, the old summoning circle and candles, well, then, you're going to learn what you can and And I mean, let's face it, these guys are, amongst everything else they're almost definitely very arrogant, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, with the sense that, look at all I've built and look at all I've done. Look at all the people whose lives hang in the balance. At a whim, I can fire 1,000 people and ruin their careers. So there's that sense of control and power. If you even, at that point, if you even caught a whiff that the paranormal might be real, I think you would dive headlong into it, because it would just be, more hidden knowledge, more secret knowledge that I know and you don't because I'm better than you, that kind of a mentality. And I think that, regardless of the effectiveness of these rituals, that alone at that level, when you're at that level, I think those that kind of feeling that, I have this secret control over people and this hidden knowledge, I think that's a powerful thing.
Well, one thing that I know to be true in most aspects of life is balance. If you're recording a song, you have to balance all the different frequencies. If you're watching a movie, the story has to be balanced. The pacing has to be balanced. When you buy something, the value to what you get has to be balanced. Everything has to be balanced in order to appeal to people, to be what we want and expect them to be. And I like to think that life is that way. That, if you're given certain gifts, that there's certain things you have trouble with. It always balances. And I know that my life is like that. I know that people I know, that's the case. But do you think when we have these people who obviously seem they're given something extra, whether that's from doing rituals. Let's just take an example and say, this guy, he does these things that hurts other people ritually to get himself ahead. And intent is very important, right? So his intent there is purely selfish, is purely a, for his personal gain. Do you think that there's going to be a balance, like there's going to come a point where it's time to pay the piper? Not necessarily that they're going to hell or something like that. I mean, forget that for a second. And just, do you think that life on its own, like nature, naturally something will happen, like he'll get a terrible disease in some way, or tragedy in the family that really would not have happened otherwise? Like just that somehow things always balance out.
Personally, I really don't think so. I really, really don't. We would all like that to be the case. And I think that it's a case of almost, an almost childish wish. Like when you're a kid, all you want is for the world to be fair. Well, why does he get that cool toy and I don't? Why does he get all the friends, or why does he get all the girls, or whatever? There's, you rail against it as a child. It's a very difficult thing to come to terms with. But, the fact of the matter is life just ain't fair. I really don't believe in any kind of balancing system. There may be, like anything, if you tip the scales too far, there may be a system where, energies reorganize themselves so that everything isn't all one way or the other. But I think on the whole, we look at what we understand about the creation of the universe, right? This far-reaching explosion that results in the creation of the planets and stars and nebulas and whole galactic structures, and it all occurred because of little temperature inconsistencies in certain areas, that the universe didn't expand uniformly. If it did, everything would be inert. There were deficiencies of energy in some places and an excess of energies in other places. And I think that's more to the tune of everyday life, biology, finances. You get this slow moving of energy and wealth from one place to the next.
So, in other words, some things just are, and I guess the one thing that is fair is that anybody can take advantage of it, right? If you're in that frame of mind, if you are a psychopath, well, that's on you. I mean, you can take advantage or not.
And you don't even necessarily have to be a psychopath to succeed.
But it helps.
Well, certainly within the systems that we've created in our modern society, there are definite benefits to, being able to screw anyone and everyone to get yourself ahead without, that keeping you up at night and becoming a psychological baggage for you. I think, like simply said, good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. There are some terrible human beings out there who have done terrible things all their lives and have lived exactly the way they wanted to without, anybody interfering, without this magical rule that karma is going to get you, and, people make the argument, well, in the next life. I was like, well, since
Nobody
you don't
knows.
remember them from one life to the next, it doesn't really matter, does it?
So, I mean, just to sum up then, life's not fair. There is no Santa Claus.
There's no Santa Claus, no.
And there's bad people who are going to do bad things to you to get ahead, and you can either...
They're probably going to get away with it.
They're probably going to get away with it. So that's a nice uplifting note to leave this on. But you know what? Misery loves company, and as bad as things are for you, sometimes it's good to just look at stories of worse things happening to other people to feel better about your current situation. God knows I've done it.
Or you just take a ride on public transport. You spend an hour or two on a bus, guaranteed you're going to see some wretched motherfucker worse off than you.
Well, there you go. Misery loves company. Just look for the people in the worst spots. I don't know if we're going to get some backlash for this, Ryan.
Well, I think it's more of not so much, looking down on the guy who's further down in the ditch with you, as much as it's a message of, if our lot in life is to wallow in the dirt, in the ditch, then, at the very least, we got company. We can wallow in the dirt together. Life isn't always going to be fair, but for those of us that, who aren't psychopaths, at the very least, chances are you have a friend or two to kind of keep you company while you're dealing with, the lot that you've been dealt with, and
if not, you have the internet.
And if not, you got the internet.
And a very popular saying in my workplace is, "It is what it is."
It is what it is. Yeah, isn't that the truth?
It is. So, hopefully you enjoyed the story and are not too off put by the very bleak ending on this otherwise interesting story. Of course, Ryan and I will have more stories coming your way soon. And again, if you have your own effed up story on the paranormal, UFOs or whatever, get that to us. You can send it to us at the official website, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. Go to the menu, go to submissions, fill out the form, hit submit. I'll get it into the website, and we'll get it into the podcast. And, thank you for listening. I am going to go drink.
Have a great night, everybody.